So yeah, I'm Brad, I'm down from Brisbane. So I thought I'd talk about some of the random stuff that sort of doesn't get talked about in the past, or you just sort of general experience from doing Christmas lights over the years. So yeah, we'll talk about how to do some basic crowd control, and yeah, planning so it runs smoothly. So history, I first synchronized in 2002 when everything was completely different. LEDs, 2008, 2011, started going pixels. 2012, we got more of it. 2013, I put the Wi-Fi matrix on the roof so people could text their names up. 2014, had more work again. 15, P10 panels and rebuilding the roof matrix. That's the sort of thing, the viewing angle. When I built the matrix originally, it was on the ground. I thought, yeah, that looks great. Got it up on the roof. It's like the football pitch advertising because of the angle. It looked a lot narrower. So stretching it out, it looks much wider when it's on the ground or you're looking straight at it, but when it's on the roof. So yeah, that was a time-consuming mistake to correct. Then yeah, last year another P10 panel, and it was mainly sequencing. I didn't do too many more lights. So the summary so far is nothing that I've done in my display was done overnight. It takes time to learn. It's pretty much a full year-long thing to do. And probably if you're starting out, start small and then duplicate from there. Because yeah, it's a steep learning curve. So if you're going to buy the perfect house, if there is one, yeah, symmetrical, opposite a park, you need bus access, a wide street, but not too wide because you don't want to be on a main road.
And no buses.
Yeah, it depends how big they are. But yeah, then yeah, if you've got a blank yard and you're going to landscape, run conduit, ducts under all your paths and driveways. You can never have enough. I only put one little 25mm conduit into my letterbox, and I regret that now because you'll always want to add more cables. Then having dedicated 240-volt power points in the garden, again, so not running extension leads. And then yeah, I find having a guard tower or somewhere to sit discreetly in your display so you can still keep an eye on it is also handy. People don't realise that I sit behind the hedge often, and I can hear them say, oh, this isn't synchronised, and stuff like that.
Yes, it is.
pretty much. But cabling, probably, yeah, standardise all your pinouts. You want to have stuff interchangeable, so if something breaks in the middle of your display, you can switch it with the one on the end. So if you had 5 of them, one breaks and you go down to 4, at least you just take the one on the end off rather than the one in the middle of the display. Having the cords detachable too, I know it's such a pain to have to solder connectors on every time, but if you're dragging a 10-metre cable up a ladder, it can be a bit more awkward doing it. And I'd also make sure your connectors for different voltages can't be interchanged. So if you've got a 12-volt power supply cable, it shouldn't be able to fit a 12-volt, a 5-volt device. Because it could be a trivial mistake late at night, and you got a 5-volt feed and a 12-volt feed, and then you get the wires mixed up. So
just use a 3-pin for a 12-volt and 4-pin for a 5-volt?
Yeah, you could do something like that. Or put electrical tape around it, so all your 5-volt stuff is got red tape, your 12-volt's got yellow tape or something like that. The cable size selection, that seems to come up a lot. Is how big of the cable does it need to be? Well, it depends because it comes down to voltage drop. You're best off using the calculators on the internet. That can tell you how to do it. Documentation's probably a big one because you remember it all in December, but come a couple of months' time, you don't remember all the cables. They start to look the same. Particularly, yeah, but if you've standardised on the cables, you've got ones that are certain lengths for certain spots. And yeah, it'll all look the same next November when you go to set up. So yeah, building a new element, it's like, where are you going to put it? So for physical size and location, obviously the cost is going to be a factor. Power requirements, how are you going to run cable to it? Controller requirements is how many outputs do you need on an existing controller? Are you using the full controller's capacity? I feel it's a waste if you're using like 2.1 channels. I'd round it back to 2 or wind it up so you're using the full universe. That's just my personal preference. And the ability to prefab stuff so you can build it inside rather than having to try and assemble it on the roof sort of helps. I also use a wiring loom, so I don't have to run 1,000 cables inside. It's much like on a car. So I've got like a junction point and then a trunk cable which runs around and then back in the roof into the inside where the controllers are. So that's just one giant big sort of snake thing that gets uncurled, and then I can jumper stuff out that way. Controller placement, I found putting anything where you can't get to it in the rain is going to be a real hassle, because that's, if anything's going to fail on the display, it'll be the stuff you can't get to. I like having hinged doors on the enclosure too, because it saves having to get a screwdriver out and undo 4 screws in a hurry. You also want to think about security and any OH&S, so if you get somebody who gets in and tampers with it, if it's anchored down or out of sight, hopefully they won't fiddle with it or mess with it. And then also the cable entry, you obviously don't want to have the cables running downhill because the water will follow it straight into your expensive controller. No-go zones, you probably want to stay off the footpath and power poles. You might get the public authorities a bit upset that way. Same with any road signs. Police might not be too happy about that if you've got some flashing light next to a stop sign. Trees you might be able to get away with depending on your street, but I'd obviously keep the cables off the footpath so nobody's going to trip over it. Okay, production timeline. So between January and Easter I don't do anything. Easter to mid-year I sort of start thinking about planning and calculations, building shopping lists of what you need to order. Mid-year to August at the latest, I'd try and get the bulk of your stuff ordered. Anything from China is going to take time to get here. You also want to order some spares because you'll always run out of connectors or you'll have some strip fail. So you want to be able to switch it in fairly easily without having to wait another 3 weeks for something to turn up. So yeah, July, August, September is sort of sequencing and element construction time. November, I get everything on the house and ready to go. Video production, if you're in a competition, in Brisbane at least, judging is around like the 20th to 25th of November. So you sort of you might have a deadline there to be ready by. And yeah, basically December's showtime, and once it's on the house, nothing's getting modified. It'll only be fairly minor to tweak it. My December crowds, from my history, is the first week's usually fairly quiet unless it's usually people that know about you beforehand. Week 2 tends to pick up. That's when in Brisbane the competition results come out. There's a lot more media publicity in general about it. Then week 3 before Christmas is usually when it gets busy on the lead up to Christmas Eve. And then after Christmas, I don't do any lights at all because I've usually had enough by then. So crowd factors, I find, and it's probably going to be similar for other people. 7 p.m, that's when it's dark in Brisbane because our curtains won't fade then. We don't have daylight saving. So yeah, usually I find there's a lot of young families turn up. 8 p.m, the first wave of people tends to die off. And then yeah, it sort of picks up again by around 9 o'clock. That's when all your P-platers and the noisy cars and the teens tend to want to turn up and have fun. Then there's obviously factors. Thursday night, 9 p.m, the shops close. There's often a large influx after that. Friday, Saturday nights are always busy. Sunday nights to a lesser extent. And then, yeah, as closer as it is to Christmas Eve, the busier it gets. Nothing kills the lights like rain when it comes to crowds. I tend to switch off if it gets really heavy, just for that it's not the fact that my display's not waterproof, it's just cars don't drive straight. So it's easier to just give up and go inside rather than trying to watch people play Russian roulette driving down the street. Christmas night, I don't do any lights, mainly because I'm in a small street and the neighbours usually got a lot of visitors and cars parked. So yeah, I call it quits from then. So then attracting the right crowd, I think, can depend. If you go viral, your choice of music. I think if you've got a lot of the techno-y dubstep sort of music, it's popular with a lot of the teens and P-plater crowds, as I call it. So they're probably likely going to cause you a lot more hassle than like a whole heap of families trying to turn up. Again, it's probably dependent on your area of where you live. But yeah, that's just from my experience. And then removing the bass from your music tends to help as well, so it won't penetrate into your neighbours' walls and through their house and skulls. And it also, I found that because the FM transmitters aren't as powerful, having no bass in it will make it clearer. Competitions, I think does anyone enter a competition here? Yeah, found it's a good way to get your address out.
Yeah, Melbourne City Council, or our council actually run one.
Yeah.
And they run 3 local buses for 3 weeks.
Oh wow, okay. Because yeah, it could be a double-edged sword if you win, and then you have every media outlet saying this is the best Christmas lights in whatever area you live in. You could get absolutely inundated by people who just say, oh, well, let's go look at the best lights, rather than having somebody else word of mouth say this is a good display, you should go see it. The judging processes can often be a little bit debatable. They're not fully transparent in how the results are calculated. It could be very subjective. That's why there's a fine print in the Brisbane competition saying judges' results are final. And the same if traffic control issues, the competitions won't care about it. That's all on your head to sort out. The Christmas light websites, I think, are a great idea because you can sort of describe your display and how it works and give any parking advice. Same with the Facebook groups. My personal preference is if people are coming to visit your display, if they already know about what they're getting, it's probably better than having people just randomly drive past and not realise it's synchronised and clog up your street that way. TV media coverage, you want to be very careful about, because if they put your address on the 6 o'clock news on a on-screen display at 6:30 when the news finishes, everyone could end up on your doorstep, and that influx will cause chaos. So if you ask them to just do the suburb only, at least people have got to get on Google and try and work out where you are. So by the time people work that out, the ones that do succeed with it, it's sort of going to dissipate the numbers over the whole night. Newspapers are usually pretty good because it's not read by any young person with a noisy car. So yeah, week 1 and 2 are good. Week 3 is probably too busy, so try and schedule anything for the earlier in the month. Having a web page and social media presence, I reckon, is really good because hopefully if you go viral, they'll link to you, and then you can make any of your own announcements regarding parking, operating times, or any other. If you need to set the record straight on whatever matter, at least you've got a platform then to do it from. So fencing, I think, is also another important aspect. So if you've got a rope up, at least people hopefully won't try and walk into your front yard if you don't want them in there. There's a lot of displays in Brisbane, at least, that are walk-through, so they're designed to have people walk around it. That's not my idea of fun. I'd rather people stay on the driveway at least, or rather than walking behind gardens and anywhere where I don't want them to be. Again, it's probably good for your public liability too if they're not walking over cables if you've got them on the ground. And if anyone's going to pinch anything against your house, at least they're going to have to hurdle over your fence to try and run away with it, so you can slow them down. And again, don't attach the fence to anything important like your letterbox, because the kid will probably jump on it and then knock it over in the process. So I just use conduit, the 20mm conduit with a golf tee sort of setup with a larger piece of conduit in the ground. Conduit goes in each night, rope around it with some reflectors on it, and then yeah, goes down easy each night. Then your neighbours fencing is something that you also need to consider, particularly for the people across the road from you, because that's where everyone's going to stand. And then the more people that rock up, the more people are going to be on the footpath, and then they'll slowly start working their way backwards. So, and talking with your neighbours too, you might want to set up some like witches' hats or some sort of invisible fence line to give the idea that this is the front yard, this is the footpath. And you'll probably have to tell people to just move onto the footpath if you're in their front yard. Because a lot of people, they don't realise every time they step back, and they'll step back, and then they're on their doorstep before they know it. That's something you just got to be aware of. If I get too busy, I shorten my show loop. So instead of having 7 songs, it goes down to 2 songs. That'll clear a lot of people out fairly quickly. Reducing the volume too, so people can't hear it. Can sort of give the hint to move on. Having a recommendation of the neighbouring displays of where to send people, particularly if they're drunk or really loud. You can give them some fantastic advice about the static display of one string somewhere else to get them to move on. And I turn off the FM transmitter if it's really busy, because then people can't park and block the street. Display security, I don't leave it unattended when it's running. I'm pretty much, if I'm not at the front, I'm inside with live view CCTV so I can see what's going on. If you're hanging around, then chances are nobody will try anything. Even when you're a big security guard like me, not. You just need to be there, and usually nobody tries anything. And then if you've got cameras, the cheap ones are going to have the mileage will vary, so you'd end up with a professional grade camera system if you really want to get good quality at night. But we'll talk more about that later. Do-it-yourself traffic control. There's probably a whole heap of rules and regulations around this, but generally I try and keep the traffic flowing, so you don't want to block access for neighbours. That'll be the first thing to fire them up. It also stops any idiots that try and overtake when there's a 2-second traffic delay. If you can keep them moving, that helps, and nobody will start blasting their horns and waking up everyone else. The traffic cones, you really need to get the big 600mm high ones, so all the people in the 4-wheel drives can see them. I found having the little tiny ones, the 4-wheel drives will just run over them if they're not watching them. They just don't see them. But the big ones, even though they're a lot more expensive, seem to be, they had better results. And then, of course, most people get the idea that traffic cones are designed to not park in front of them, but you get plenty of people that don't understand it. I also think it's important to wear a fluoro vest, even though you look like a bit of an idiot in the process. It gives uniforms give authority. So if you go up to someone and say, hey, can you park your car over there, you've got a better chance of them doing it, because they obviously would assume you're in charge. It's also good that the neighbours know where you are by quickly looking out in a big crowd of people. The person in the fluoro vest, they know is you. And on your CCTV, the infrared lights up on the reflectors, like a neon light. So it's very easy if you're replaying footage to know whereabouts you were if you're trying to track down something after it's happened. I'd use a torch too and light up the ground if you're walking across the road, because the chances are the cars are probably driving and then looking over their shoulder at the lights. Not that they should, but there's a good chance. If you're going to approach any cars, you probably don't want to sneak up on them, particularly if they're younger women driving. You can. You don't want to. Yeah. But yeah, I found they can get startled if you sneak up in a blind spot and say, "Oh, do you don't want to just move your car forward?" No. No, so yeah, approach wide with your torch on the ground so at least they can see you coming rather than sneaking up behind them. Because you don't want them hitting the accelerator. If the car's in gear and then you give them a fright and they hit the gas and then plough through the crowd, that could be a real disaster. So yeah, always go wide. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I've had it. I didn't think I was sneaking up on them, but yeah, apparently I did. Huh? Nah. So yeah, a lot of the cars won't drive straight, I've found, when the lights are on. So if you see anyone stopped and they leave their reversing lights on, I always tell them you're still in reverse, because often if kids go and sit in the gutter or stand behind the car, you don't want them, oh yep, lights are done, hit the accelerator, then go backwards instead of forwards. Might sound trivial, but yeah, it's easy, especially if they're trying to squeeze in between other cars. They're like, oh, we finally got a spot, and then yeah, leave it in reverse. And so cars blocking your traffic cones, I always approach them and say, oh, hi, you're looking for parking? And then by the time they try and give an answer, you sort of say, oh, parking's that way. And then usually by the time they get the idea to keep moving. If they don't like it, usually they just drive off and don't come back. It's like, oh well, there's always plenty more people. You can give them reasons, say, oh, there's a tour bus coming from the retirement village. That always gets people with good cars to move, because I don't want them sideswiped. And then, yeah, obviously say, oh, yeah, the neighbours need to come in and out. You need to keep the police happy. So often when people hear the word police, they think, oh, police? Better do it. You're not saying you're police. Definitely don't do that, because that's got its own ramifications. Well, yeah, that's different again.
We actually had one within our street.
Yeah.
We actually came out and told people to move on.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. They can move into my street. And then yeah, you can say it's like traffic management plan. We just need to keep the street clear. Most people are pretty good about it then. If not, then yeah, they tend to leave very quickly. I don't let anyone block a neighbour's driveway, no matter what time of night it is. It's just a bad look, I think, because if one person does it, the next person looking for a parking spot's like, oh, they're across the driveway, it should be okay. I've had people say, oh, the neighbours aren't going to go out at this time of night, are they? And it's like, well, dude, you're out. So, yeah, it's sort of, yeah, if they block the driveway, it's like, oh, hi, the neighbours are about to come home, you need to move your car. And they're like, oh, okay. It sinks in. So, yeah, my operating hours, I always finish at 10 o'clock and I don't go a second later until the pipe layer finishes it. I think it gives the neighbours comfort knowing that all the traffic's going to stop at 10 o'clock each night, and that'll be the end of it. So, yeah, I pretty much stick to that. There's always somebody that turns up at 5 minutes past 10. It's like, oh, sorry, the computer's already shut down. It's on a timer. Yada, yada, yada. Too bad. Come back tomorrow night. Then, yeah, that was on social media. I thought it was rather funny. A lot of people think that we're paid by radio stations or power companies to put on the light show. But, yeah, we're not. It's yeah. Somebody from Brendale, that's a suburb next to me, they should have just come to mine. But, yeah, well, my lights would have been off by then anyway. That's a Macca's chip packet, so, yeah.
They're pretty desperate.
Yeah. So, yeah, any signage you're going to make needs to be massive, and it needs to be fairly big. Or, yeah, big and clear, because people can't read spiels of text. You probably don't want to copy any traffic signs, any of the official ones, because it could be a bit of a legal issue. But if you've got a no parking sign, at least people will hopefully follow it, but you're not going to be issuing parking tickets or anything like that. But if you duplicate a proper one and then put it on a post, yeah, that could cause some other issues for yourself. Maybe. That's what I did for a sign box with a crate, so I can put my smaller witches' hats inside, and then I had the Tune 2 sign on top of it. That was A3 size, an A3 size plus an A4. That's probably as small as I'd want to go, but yeah, getting access to anything bigger than an A3 printer is a bit more tricky. I reckon for volume, if you're going to have yard speakers, use the crappiest speakers you can find, because they don't tend to carry the sound. I use little 2-inch ones next to my letterbox on either side. And again, like I said, the mixing desk back in the house strips out the audio base. So yeah, doesn't go as far. The volume controlling, the louder your volume, the louder your audience is going to start talking. So if you turn your volume down, generally people start talking quieter then because they can't hear it. And again, a lot of the peep loaders, when they turn up at 9:30 at night being fairly loud, they jump out of the car thinking, oh, it's all awesome and that. They just don't realise how loud they are. So when you go over and say, hey guys, what do you think? Oh, I need to be quiet so I don't get shut down by my neighbours. They're like all usually pretty cool after that. So it's another reason to always be nearby your display. Because at the end of the day, if your neighbours start doing a petition against you, your lights are going to be all over. And yeah, the pipe player, being able to control the volume from the web interface, so you can be there with your phone and then turn the volume down. If somebody turns their car stereo up and then turn the volume down again, I find works brilliant. Yeah, my transmitter's fairly soft in volume because it's only low power. They get 100 metres down the road and I suddenly hear them get blasted when they change back to the commercial 50 watt or 500 watt transmitter, whatever it is. So yeah, end of the night, you always want to do a walk around and check that there's no rubbish left by any grubs. And also like stuff like if you put out traffic cones and fencing, it'd be surprising about how much you forget to bring in if you don't do a second walk around sometimes. And don't forget to empty your donation tin if it's in like your letterbox, because that's easy to forget by the time you do everything else. Collecting for charities, it's a good thing, because then your lights are for a good cause. It's not just that you're putting up lights for the fun of it or ego. So yeah, it's a good way to get money for a local charity or cause. You'll need to get a letter of authority organised from them so people know you're legit, and that's usually got to be displayed somewhere near your donation tin. And probably my number one tip of all is build a test rig so you can actually test the brightness of the lights rather than trying to look on the computer screen, because it never correlates 100%. I find what looks really dim on the computer screen can still be quite effective on LED strip. So that's one way to save, being out on the footpath at midnight trying to readjust all your brightness levels. So that's the end of the bit I want recorded.